The call came in just after sunset, the kind of call that instantly rearranges the atmosphere in a quiet suburban town. 8-year-old Amari Hall was missing. Her mother's voice, trembling yet strangely controlled, echoed through the dispatcher's headset as she described the last time she saw her daughter, playing in the backyard, a pink hoodie slipping off one shoulder, laughter drifting into the evening air. Within minutes, patrol cars lined the street, their flashing lights painting the neighborhood in pulses of red and blue. Neighbors gathered in hushed clusters, whispering theories that shifted by the minute. The air grew thick with urgency. Search teams were assembled, drones launched, and officers began knocking on every door within a 2-mile radius. Volunteers poured in overnight, people who had never met Amari but felt compelled by something primal, the instinct to protect a child. Her photo spread rapidly across social media platforms, reaching thousands within hours, her bright smile and curious eyes becoming a symbol of hope and fear intertwined. By midnight, the search had expanded to nearby woods, abandoned buildings, and even drainage systems. Every minute mattered. Every second felt like a narrowing window. Her father stood near the command post, answering questions, his face pale and distant, while her mother clutched a blanket that still carried Amari's scent. The story gained traction across national networks, drawing attention from across the United States and parts of Europe, where audiences followed the updates with growing concern. Reporters described it as a race against time, a desperate 48-hour search that would either end in relief or heartbreak. But beneath the organized chaos, beneath the coordinated efforts and unified determination, there was something else, something subtle, almost invisible, a tension that didn't align with the narrative being presented. Two people stood at the center of it all, offering answers, shedding tears, participating in the search, yet carrying a truth that no one else could see. Because Amari Hall wasn't missing, not in the way everyone believed, and the clock that had started ticking wasn't counting down to a rescue, it was counting down to a revelation that would fracture the entire town.
By the second day, exhaustion had begun to creep into every corner of the operation. Volunteers moved slower, their voices quieter, their hopes strained but not yet broken. The search radius widened again, stretching into neighboring towns, highways, and surveillance footage reviews that ran non-stop in a temporary command center. Investigators began retracing every step of Amari's last known movements, reconstructing her day down to the smallest detail. School records confirmed she had attended class, interacted normally, even laughed with friends during recess. Nothing seemed out of place. Yet something didn't fit. Subtle inconsistencies began to emerge, small contradictions in timelines, details that shifted slightly each time they were repeated. Detectives noticed it first, then quietly began separating statements, asking the same questions in different ways. Amari's parents, once viewed solely as victims of an unimaginable tragedy, became the focus of deeper scrutiny. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't obvious, but it was enough. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera showed no sign of Amari entering the backyard that evening. Another camera, positioned across the street, captured a vehicle leaving the driveway at an unusual hour, long after the time her parents claimed she had gone missing. The tension that had lingered beneath the surface now began to rise, slowly, like something long buried pushing its way into the light. Investigators pressed harder, their questions sharper, their tone more deliberate. The narrative started to shift, not publicly, but within the closed doors of the investigation. The search continued, still massive, still urgent, but now divided by an unspoken realization. They might not be looking for a lost child. They might be uncovering a concealed truth. The emotional weight intensified as officers balanced two conflicting realities: the hope of finding Amari alive and the growing suspicion that the answers they needed were already standing in front of them. By hour 36, cracks began to form. One statement didn't align with another. A timeline collapsed under scrutiny. And then a single detail, small, almost insignificant, triggered a breakthrough that would change everything. It wasn't a scream or a confession. It was quieter than that. A pause, a hesitation,
A moment where the carefully constructed story faltered. And in that silence, investigators found what they had been searching for. Not in the woods, not in the streets, but within the people who had claimed to be searching alongside them.
The final 12 hours didn't feel like a search anymore. They felt like a slow unraveling. The coordinated effort shifted into something more contained, more controlled, as investigators followed a trail that led them away from the public eye. The breakthrough came in a location no one had prioritized, a place too close, too ordinary to raise suspicion. When they arrived, there were no crowds, no cameras, no volunteers calling out Amari's name. Just silence. Heavy, undeniable silence. What they discovered there ended the search instantly, but it also shattered every remaining piece of hope. The truth emerged not through dramatic confrontation, but through evidence, unavoidable, irrefutable, and devastating. The people who had stood at the center of the search, who had spoken to the media, who had pleaded for help, had known all along. Their involvement wasn't loud or chaotic, it was calculated, concealed beneath layers of normalcy and performance. The motive, when uncovered, didn't bring clarity, it only deepened the tragedy. It revealed a sequence of decisions, moments where things could have been different, paths that could have been taken but weren't. As the news broke, the community shifted from grief to disbelief. The same streets that had been filled with volunteers now echoed with a different kind of silence, a collective attempt to process something incomprehensible. Across the United States and Europe, audiences who had followed the story in real time felt the weight of its conclusion. It wasn't just the loss of a child, it was the betrayal of trust, the collapse of something fundamental. The 48-hour search had ended, but its impact lingered far beyond that framework. Investigators closed the case with answers, but no sense of resolution. Because some stories don't end when the truth is revealed. They continue in the questions that remain, in the quiet spaces left behind. And Amari Hall's story became one of those stories. Not just a tragedy, but a reminder of how easily appearances can deceive, how quickly narratives can shift, and how sometimes the people closest to the truth are the ones hiding it the deepest.